Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, January 30th, 2019. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Republicans already walking away from the second government shutdown threat, and apparently the wall. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris already inching away from her Medicare for All pledge. U.S. intel chiefs on a different page than Donald Trump. In fact, they're working apparently on a different book, in a different bookstore, on a slightly different planet.
Different printing press.
In an entirely different language. Meanwhile, Bill Barr confirmation is delayed for now. A vote won't come before Matt Whitaker has to testify in front of the Judiciary Committee. That makes that hearing a little more interesting.
He looks really relaxed about it.
Totally. And congratulations, America. The CEO of GoFundMe says that 1/3 of all fundraisers on his platform are for medical reasons.
Cool system.
U.S. has decided to give Venezuela's not president the key to all of Venezuela's bank accounts. Trump administration, meanwhile, locks the door on asylum seekers. And anti-vaxxers fuel a measles outbreak in Washington state. And remember that Wisconsin Foxconn deal? Well, it's even worse now than it was yesterday, which was worse than it was when it was signed, which was worse. You get the idea.
Which was worse than when Charlie Kirk touted it at Politicon.
Indeed. Contrary to Brazilian law, Lula kept from his brother's funeral as he stays in prison. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us today. We have a full house. Everyone is here and healthy, which is shocking to me. Everyone I know, anyone I know who has a kid, their kid has been out sick at least one day over the past 2 weeks.
There's a bug going around?
Yeah, it's going around here. It's and with all the cold coming in, gosh, I don't know. It's a real mess, folks. We got to figure out what the hell is going on out there. That's what I'm saying.
The immune systems, it's unbelievable.
It's absolutely
crazy.
Unbelievable.
I heard a lot of people are switching because they're getting sick because of Nancy Pelosi.
So reports out today that the big border deal that was supposedly coming has already basically dissipated. Democrats are not planning on negotiating on behalf of DACA recipients, basically because they don't trust that Trump would actually provide a permanent fix in any way, right? That he will not follow through on a deal. You know, a lot of times we think of these things that like, well, they'll sign it at the same time. But we have a lot of instances where, for instance, Mitch McConnell has made certain promises to bring up certain legislation and whatnot, and then it just goes away. And it's not a story because nobody's going to read a story that, oh, that didn't happen, period, end of story, or People will read about it, but it's not going to be on cable news when that stuff never happens. It's going to be mentioned as an afterthought. And the Democrats simply do not believe that Trump is a good faith negotiator, which I think is a fairly rational response. And so they won't make this deal. In the meantime, as we know, because the Supreme Court has not taken up any of the DACA cases, we're in a situation where DACA folks are protected for at least a year. It's still, I think, a horrible position to be in, incredibly stressful. There still makes it much harder for DACA recipients to function on a day-to-day basis in our society. But the imminent threat of deportation is not there at the moment. Same too, the TPS case still tied up in court. So I think the idea from the Democratic perspective is we have some leverage here. There's no reason to trust him to do something that we don't think he's going to do. And the fact of the matter is the Republicans got destroyed on this shutdown. They got destroyed. They realized that they caused a tremendous amount of suffering, frankly, in the country, stress amongst hundreds of thousands of workers. There are tens of thousands of workers who are not going to get their payback. I think there's an attempt in the House to pass a bill so that contractors will get back pay. But when we talk about contractors in this instance, what we're talking about are janitors, maybe cafeteria services at places like the museums in the city or government buildings in Washington, D.C. Those folks who really probably need it as much, if not more than any government people affected by this, at this point will not be getting back pay. That may change. So it turns out, not just a vacation. And I don't know how their bridge loans worked out that they were able to secure from their friendly banker down the street, who they've done all this business with, who's so willing to give them money. So at this point, Trump is going to have to decide whether he will declare a national emergency or not. My guess is they're just going to sort of like pretend like none of this happened, because in 3 weeks, there will be something else that we'll be talking about that is so unbelievably ridiculous. Meanwhile, people are starting to dig in. Now that we are in a situation where we just went through the longest government shutdown we've ever experienced, where we have some places in national parks that will never recover for generations. They're talking about Joshua Tree National Park, where you have people who are going to feel the impact of having no money for that month come in for probably months. It'll probably take a year for people to sort of recover from that situation and not have it be something that they're dealing with, paying off credit card bills, worrying about, dealing with reshaping the things that they had jiggered around because of anxieties. Government agencies probably won't recover for another 18 months in terms of contracts that had to be put on hold, deadlines that were missed, et cetera, et cetera. So now that we've gone through all this, the question becomes, as Republicans are now too afraid to engage in it again, rightfully so, whether Donald Trump will declare a national emergency to build the wall. People are starting to look into his claims of why there needed to be a wall. And I think Rachel Maddow talked about this first a couple of nights ago. But we have a CNN clip that basically looks into this movie, Sicario 2, I guess. Sicario 2. And sees that a lot of what Donald Trump has been saying about the border seems to have come directly from this movie.
It's a great film.
Let's watch this clip.
Ready?
There are prayer rugs in the film. The president tweeted about prayer rugs found on the border from a story in the conservative Washington Examiner, which quotes an anonymous New Mexico rancher who had no evidence of the prayer rugs. The film also features terrorists who paid drug cartels to bring them into the country. What else on the president's mind?
People are pouring into our country, including terrorists. We have terrorists. We caught 10 terrorists over the last very short period of time. 10. These are very serious people.
That claim appears to be the president accidentally or willfully misunderstanding a Customs and Border Patrol statistic that 10 suspected terrorists on average are blocked every day from entering the U.S., mostly by flying at locations worldwide. And then there's duct tape. The president has that on his mind, too.
They nab women, they grab them, they put tape over their mouth, they tie their hands. They have tape over their mouths, electrical tape, usually blue tape, as they call it.
10 times this month alone, counted the Washington Post.
Tying up women, putting tape in their mouth. They tie up women, taping them up. Women are tied up, they're bound. They have women in the back seat of the cars with duct tape all over the place.
The president claimed women are duct tape shoved into vehicles driven across the border and sold. Those who work every day trying to protect vulnerable immigrants from sexual exploitation say duct tape isn't a thing.
We have a database of 1,435 indictments, and we went through all the indictments, and we found 26 cases that involved kidnapping. We did a search on duct tape, and we found one case of 1,435 cases that mentioned duct tape.
And that case was an American, not a migrant. In looking at all federal trafficking cases, most victims are U.S. citizens. Only about a third of trafficking cases are foreign nationals, and the vast majority of them enter the U.S. with legal visas. No duct tape.
What Donald Trump is missing with this sort of fictional account, Hollywood version of human trafficking, is the dire cases that do exist in the United States, including cases of forced labor and forced prostitution.
One incoming on your right. There are seen nothing. Contact right. I didn't see anything. Oh, down.
One other highly dramatic possible Hollywood fascination the president has: those coming across the border have better cars and equipment than U.S. law enforcement.
They have the best vehicles you can buy. They have stronger, bigger, and faster vehicles than our police have, and then ICE has, and then Border Patrol has.
It doesn't exactly fit the second Sicario film. CNN and many news agencies have asked the White House.
All right, I mean, this is what kind of vehicles are coming in? Do they think that they're coming in?
Well, did you watch the documentary? Maybe you should do your research before you snark.
Now,
hopefully he will watch that movie if they can keep him up through it, because I don't want to freak people out with a spoiler, but the enemy might be within in that movie. It might be actually, I don't know.
This is like a fake on a fake on a fake. And the White House clearly understood that there was a problem here. And but I suspect what it is that, like, Stephen Miller could be just sitting there and describing this to the president as a way of getting on board. This could be like the wall, right? Which was just a way for him to remember to bring up immigration. Wall will always laugh loudly about immigration. There was something like that.
Oh no,
he could pronounce it. He could wrap his mind around it. It's perfect.
When did they take 2020 off the air? They should be covering that.
Apparently, Vox saw an email provided to them by a member with the Border Patrol, which was sent as a request for information by the Assistant Border Patrol Chief on behalf of the Office of Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Kevin McClain, who is referred to internally as C1, and it asked agents to reply within less than 2 hours. They wanted the response within 2 hours. And it was the text of the email. The subject line was "Quick turnaround. RFI taped up women smuggled into the U.S. All. We require your assistance on a quick turnaround for C1." That was the commissioner.
Not done by ICE agents.
So the commissioner needs this. Commissioner needs this quick. Please forward any information that you have in any format regarding claims that, quote, traffickers tie up and silence women with tape before legally driving them through the desert from Mexico to the United States in the backs of cars in windowless vans, which is exactly the language that Trump was using.
Bonus points if it mentions blue tape.
And reference the news article below for further info. That news article was a Washington Post article asking where are... here it is. Trump's stories of taped up women smuggled into U.S. are divorced from reality, experts say. So they were looking for anything that would in any way refute the idea that Trump's stories are divorced from reality. And it appears that he did not, that request was not fulfilled, or I'm sure we would have heard about it. There would have already been a special announcement from the White House.
It's blue duct tape, and maybe Nancy wants her MS-13 lovers to do that to her, but other Americans don't.
There's a story here. The same guy who wrote the speech where he was quoting Bane from Batman at the Republican convention. You remember that? This is the same stuff. Something's going on there. Somebody's figured out, like, we can just tell the old man a story from the from a movie, and he'll just buy it. He's not seen any movies. I can't watch the violent stuff.
I don't watch movies. I have too much work to do. It's executive time.
Transferring power from one administration to another, or from one party to another. But we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
And we give it back to you, the people.
For too long, a small group in our nation's capital
are corrupt,
has reaped the rewards of government.
The rich.
While...
All right, there we go.
Oh, my God. We talked with Leslie Lee III from Struggle Session on the Antifada this week, and he noted that part of the reason why Resistance TV is so bad is nothing could be funnier than Trump is in real life. And I think that's very true.
It's tough to parody this stuff. Folks, it's 2019. Are you still doing the things the old way at work? Start the year off right by replacing that software that causes you angst and agony every day. Find software that fits your business's needs at Capterra.com. Capterra is the leading free online resource to help you find the best software solution for your business. With over 700,000 reviews of products from real software users, it has everything you need to make an informed decision. Search more than 700 specific categories of software. Everything from project management to email marketing to yoga studio management software. No matter what kind of software your business needs, Capterra makes it easy to discover the right solution fast. Join the millions of people who use Capterra each month to find the right tools for their business. So I've been noodling around on this site, right, just before the and it's basically just like they've aggregated 700 categories. But then, like, each one has, I don't know, half a dozen different pieces of software that would work for it. They have everything from just a couple of just read off the A/B testing software, which interests me. I mean, I don't know that I'll ever end up using it, but I'm interested to see, like, what we would do to broaden the reach of the podcast. Animal shelter software, arborist software. This is just the A's.
That's cool.
If you have like a tree company, they have software that is built for you. Auto repair software. I'm just going through the B's now. Building maintenance, business card software, consignment store. If you have a consignment store, they have software that helps you run your I guess your inflows and your outflows. They have a dance studio software.
Products.
Employment engagement software, engineering CAD software. These are just categories. Insurance rating. I mean, it goes on and on. Check it out. It's pretty amazing. Visit Capterra.com/majority for free today to find the right tools to make 2019 the year for your business. Capterra.com/majority. Capterra, that's CAPTERRA. Capterra.com/majority. Check it out. If you run a business, any type of business, they have software for you. All right, let's just one more thing about what's happening at the border. Donald Trump, of course, I don't know if he's going to declare a national emergency to pretend to build a fake wall. But in reality, what they have been able to do is to make life even more miserable for people whose lives are so miserable that in some instances they will walk thousands of miles to get away from that misery. As you know, you cannot apply for asylum to the United States from whatever country you are coming from until you are on United States territory. You need to have 1 foot in the United States to seek asylum. And what happens is you come across the border, you say, we are seeking asylum, or I am seeking asylum. Maybe you're doing it with your kids. You get a screening. If you can prove credible fear that if you go back to your home country, you will be oppressed in some fashion, you qualify for an actual immigration court hearing. In those instances, under the Obama administration, and now I think under the Trump to a certain extent, you are released under supervision, right? You have to check in with sponsors who are living in the United States. If you can't demonstrate credible fear, you're deported. The Supreme Court established a measure in which to determine whether you can make at least an initial claim that you have a credible fear of being persecuted. And that is that you have a 1 in 10 chance probability of being persecuted. That's enough. And there's some mechanism in which they determine you have a 1 in 10 chance. Maybe a function of how many people, 16-year-olds are killed, or how many go into jail. But the threshold is relatively low for that first process, because you don't want to send someone back home to die, or to be imprisoned for an extended period of time, or to be raped, or to be held, to be kidnapped, or etc., to be beaten on a daily basis. So that has been the standard for over 30 years as to that first part of the process. Now, the Trump administration has essentially created a new interview that must take place in Mexico if you're coming in from the southern border. It employs a much higher standard that would require an asylum seeker to prove that it is more likely than not that they would be persecuted in Mexico in order to remain in the country while their case is pending. So they must have a higher standard. And now, I don't know what's going to happen in Mexico when all these asylum seekers are forced to be there. They have their family is in the United States. That's why they're trying to come to the United States. It remains to be seen. But the Mexican government has said repeatedly that it disagrees with the policy, and they argue it's being imposed on the country by the United States. This is it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. And Mexico has said it would only admit Central Americans between the ages of 18 and 60 as part of the new policy because a large portion of asylum seekers are family units or unaccompanied minors. The Mexican response could erode the potential impact of the new policy in that they will not allow, children to come in. But you're going to see a lot more split up of families in that instance, it seems to me. It's a mess. And it's incredibly harsh and totally unnecessary. But this is what this administration is about. If they have one agenda, even if it doesn't get, there's not a lot of people out there going like, I really want there's no voters. I don't know that there's a lot of voters out there who have the level of sophistication in their hatred for immigrants that I want a policy where asylum seekers are sent back for preliminary interviews in Mexico. I just don't think that's out there. But I think there's a concerted effort within the administration. And this new book, the author claims that Stephen Miller has said, like, I don't want one asylum seeker to touch this country.
Wow. I mean, I don't think there are many voters, but there are certainly segments of capital that are happy to benefit from having immigrants be as marginalized and criminalized as possible.
Well, they're not here. I mean, so it's not just a question of capital may have that interest, but this policy doesn't further that.
Yeah,
this policy excludes people from out of the country.
But it definitely contributes to the marginalization of immigrants who are here.
It might. When they're all gone, they won't. I mean, this administration, this is where the Trump administration is at loggerheads with some of that. That's why the Koch brothers have an issue with it. So I think in general you're right, but I don't think that's what's animating this. I think what's animating this is white supremacy, white nationalism.
But these people are willing to put up with it because it also benefits them.
I mean, you can argue that I haven't seen evidence of that. There are people, I think, agitating to get against the Trump administration about, on the right. The Chamber of Commerce is not happy with this. Maybe they're pretending about it. But I agree with you. They want a significant number of undocumented people in this country so they can exploit them. But this is not the way you would go about doing it. You would let these people in, and then you could exploit them. They're not supposed to be working. You have them already. You can't exploit them if they're not here. And so this is just, I think, unadulterated white supremacy. And it's grotesque, but it's what this administration has been pushing for, months. Meanwhile, yesterday, I don't know if you were listening to the fun half of the program. Many of you were not. But I had an extended conversation with Mike from Pennsylvania about Kamala Harris. And he was saying that he thinks that Kamala Harris's call for Medicare for all was disingenuous. And I said that may be the case, but it's a very hard argument to make at this point based upon the way that she phrased things. However, an hour after we said that, this story came out, and it's interesting. She drew apparently record ratings for CNN, and I want to make that clear. That's why we're talking more about Kamala Harris right now than we are, let's say, Beto or Gillibrand. I mean, not as many people have announced. Even Sherrod Brown has not officially announced. Now Elizabeth Warren has. We spent some time with Warren, and now we're talking about Harris. And she is right now, the most prominent candidate who's declared in terms of the Democrats and in terms of attention she's getting. And I think, understandably, she received a 2 million viewers on CNN's town hall, which was 75% above CNN's 4-week average in the 10 o'clock hour. So there's some real excitement and curiosity around Kamala Harris. And, we played yesterday some clips that from that town hall, but also about that shed some light on her. Not just the fact that she was a prosecutor. I know there's some people who think that all prosecutors are inherently it's disqualifying. I've said in the past that, if Elliot Spitzer turned out not to have a pathology, I think he would have been a great candidate. This is a guy who went after bankers and financial criminals with, a pretty big intensity. And so, only a prosecutor is going to be able to do that. It's not so much that, for me, that she was a prosecutor. The one election I cared about in the primary last year more than any was I wanted Zephyr Teachout to be the chief prosecutor of New York State. The issue is not that she was a prosecutor, but you can see numerous instances of her disdain for any type of criminal justice reform. And you can see her bragging about policies that are incredibly punitive to people living in poverty, to people who have been marginalized, to people of color. And it's going to be interesting to see, we said at the time yesterday, if we're going to see any pushback from like Black Lives Matter folks or, folks who have been working in the space of criminal justice reform. And there's some indication that we are seeing some of that. Do we have her tweet? Do we have that tweet?
I put it in sound polls. It's Keonga Taylor.
Who is, we've had her on once or twice. You've probably had her on too on TMBS.
Not for a while, yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see if this becomes more of an issue for Kamala Harris. She writes, Keonga Yamada Taylor says, using the stick, a threat of imprisonment to get poor black people to fall in line. If you excuse this away by claiming this is what she had to do to be electable, you're telling yourself not all of us see black people as expendable. The eggs you break to make an omelet. So this is Kamala Harris's comments of using the stick to make poor families behave. Yeah, that's the video that we had played yesterday or 2 days ago when she was talking about using the stick to get people to make sure that their kids were not playing hooky. And that a stick, of course, being, this is problematic stuff that I don't think the majority of Democrats necessarily care about. However, if more people like Yamada Taylor start speaking up who are engaged in this as an issue and begin to say like, hey, this is very problematic because this is what her background is. She doesn't have another decade of being a state lawmaker or a federal lawmaker. This has been her career. And if the fundamental perspective she had on this was that there was a moral problem with some of these people who needed to be disciplined in some fashion, this could grow into a problem. And, the argument that Mike from PA was making yesterday was that she has no, real depth in terms of her relationship to Medicare for All. And my argument was, well, she signed on to Bernie's proposal almost immediately as a co-sponsor. And it is true that she's also co-sponsored 2 or 3 other Medicare for All light proposals.
Yeah, she's hedging her bets.
Well, I mean, definitely arguably. She was co-sponsor on a bill called Medicare X from Michael Bennett and Tim Kaine, which would just add the public option on the Affordable Care Act exchanges, which, of course, again, it would be helpful, but we're talking about that would impact at the only a 10 million person pool of people. It wouldn't help anybody outside of the exchanges with all the issues that we have with our health insurance, including cost, including the pain in the ass that insurance is. Brian Schatz would create a public option broadly for everybody outside of the to do a buy-in to Medicaid. But again, I know some people on Medicaid. Depends on where you live, as we heard yesterday or 2 days ago. But that's not the same as having a Medicare for All, one that is not a function of the states, but rather, one that the federal government would administer. So, but she said very forcefully 2 nights ago on a CNN town hall, I am for Medicare for all. I am for, and Bernie's plan calls for the slow phase out of the private insurance business.
She basically said, I think it was like, let's move beyond all that. Specifically with regards to these private insurers. That was her strongest answer of the night.
Yes, yeah. And understand that this would phase out, and you would still, I think even under Bernie's plan, you wouldn't necessarily have all of these, there would just be no private insurance companies that themselves are in the insurance business as opposed to maybe administering some of the government plans. Like we have that relationship with some Medicare providers, right? They pay through. But nevertheless, today there's a story out that she is distancing herself, or not distancing herself, but she's put out a statement that one of her, press people have, that, she's open to keeping private insurers. Now look, I actually think that here's the thing. I don't know what this tells us about what she would do, but it definitely tells us about how deeply she is committed to a vision or a policy here. If she had said the other night, look, I'm open to getting rid of private insurers, but I think there's some important reasons why you might want to keep it. Or, if there was anything that implied she's done some thought about this and has a relationship to the policy, because I think there could be arguments, like I say, for keeping some private insurance as supplemental. Certainly done it in other states. I think there's arguments. I don't know if I agree with them or not, but there's definitely legitimate arguments.
Well, and let's make it clear, though. Bernie's plan doesn't make private insurers illegal. He just doesn't want to go through them to administer a Medicare for all system, which is not the same thing.
Well, right.
And there's no reason to go through them unless you want to.
I know, but that's not my argument. My argument is that when assessing whether she feels she has really focused on this question as opposed to ticking off a box, these are things that you should have pretty much worked out so that you don't have to 24 hours later walk it back. That to me is suspicious. This is very reminiscent, in my mind, of Barack Obama claiming that on day one he's going to renegotiate NAFTA, and then 2 days after that we hear reports of Austin Goolsbee going up to his one of his chief economic advisors up in Canada, being out of the country. This is the way you do it, leaking that, meeting with the Canadians, assuring them that we're not going to renegotiate NAFTA, which was a backdoor way of letting corporations know, letting the interest of the Chamber of Commerce know we're not going to renegotiate.
Right.
NAFTA.
So the difference is actually the Obama-Goolsbee move was way more sleazy because it was secret, right? This just looks more, secret in quotes. I understand. But it
was more adept. Let's put it
that
way.
Well, that was the second thing I was going to say.
Yeah.
Sleazy and way more effective to back channel something like that. But I think I've held the position of, particularly on things like Medicare for All, where she doesn't have a long track record one way or another, and she signed on to the Bernie bill, and she gave a great answer. I was following the CNN town hall and tweeting about it and talking with people in the Discord about it a little bit, and I was like, and that was one where I said, oh, that's excellent. That's a very, very strong answer. But, such a quick reversal, it's a good time to also, re-review her donor lists and I think her just sort of basic inclinations as well. And I wouldn't have said that yesterday because I think
I was arguing
I know
that
you
it's
were
impossible to make
but conversely, not a bad bet to be wary of her commitments on policies like that.
Yeah, on the donor tip. What this says to me is that when the second she gets any pushback from the business sector, she blinks. And that doesn't bode well for the future. And you do need to look at who's giving her money.
Isn't the key to the whole problem of people supposedly like their private insurance just to make whatever the government offers really generous?
Well, it's not that people like their private insurance. People like their doctors.
Yeah, they like their doctors.
And they don't want to have to change. But, I mean...
I like Oscar.
Listen,
I just like
the arguments about the private insurance or not, that's distinct from this. This is really more about assessing how deeply she has considered this. Like I say, had she come out and said at the CNN thing exactly what her press release said the next day when she was backing off of what she had said the night before, I would be a lot less critical of that because maybe I would disagree with the policy, but it's clear that there's been some sitting down and wrestling with the issue.
And that's actually what I had thought had happened, but in the reverse. I thought it was like she's clearly basically running a centrist campaign, and it's 1992, middle-class tax cuts, and, and then Medicare for all is the bridge to the left.
Yeah, let's throw 'em a
because that
bone.
answer was so clear and so unequivocal. I was like, oh, this is going to be the one, and maybe also just potentially the new mainstream of the Democratic Party. You're going to be a real outlier if you're not supporting this. So I was also, that's, I think, the way we're narrowing it. I mean, obviously it's troubling in and of itself because it's the right policy and the policy we need, but it's also, it's a mishap for a campaign that's actually had like a really smooth rollout. So that's also troubling.
She did throw in the word access, though, which should always make you suspicious when anyone says that in reference to healthcare. It is a total dog whistle.
Yeah, I that's true too. We, I think we got into like a Twitter fight with Andy Slavitt about that. And there was polling that suggested people like that word. And that's what I think he responded to, right? That's why you hear that word, and it's a meaningless word. But this is why when we get to the debates, or we get to a sort of a narrower race, or where things become a little bit more pointed, these type of things are going to come to the fore. And, again, it's only worth so much. If you'll recall, in 2008, it was Barack Obama who was championing the public option, but saying the mandate wasn't necessary. And it was Hillary Clinton saying that the mandate was necessary. That was their big issue, the over the mandate. But I don't know. So just a revisit on the Kamala Harris thing. I imagine there'll be more coming in the future. Meanwhile, it really does feel like the Trump administration is really trying to set the table for some type of either direct or sponsored military action in Venezuela. You heard the other day what, hopefully you listened on last Thursday, Michael gave sort of the broad outlines of what's happening in Venezuela. And I've actually been reading just a little bit of some legal thinkers stuff about people who were supportive of the use of that constitutional amendment in Venezuela, but feel that Guaido, I can't pronounce it, Guaido went a step too far. It's one thing to use that constitutional amendment as a way of saying we need to start a process to find a new president. It's another to simply say like, oh, and I found one. It's me. And it also feels like the U.S. is a little bit rusty at this. Doesn't it? Doesn't it feel like...
I want to be really clear that the U.S. Has definitely been, the 2009 coup in Honduras was backed by the U.S., what we've done in lawfare in Brazil. So we've been all over this. But this specific version of like 1980s, like kind of like, let's have the military depose somebody and set up death squads. It does seem like they're a little bit rusty.
Well, they tried it in Venezuela in 2002, right, with Hugo Chavez, but they failed.
Yeah, but it was a half-hearted thing.
The pattern in Venezuela that also is similar to now, though 2002 there was way more grassroots support for Chavez, but it's just that the opposition hypes the Republican administration, Bush, now Trump, and it's like we got this.
It just seems like they're showing their cards. The administration is just showing their cards in a way that we haven't seen.
I think the reason they're doing this now, though, is they're trying to intimidate the military into defecting. I think they're really trying to say, like, look, guys, this isn't just like we're going to back a couple of oligarchs and you can still keep your patronage networks with a new government, which is obviously the case.
So
this is like
put up a picture of him with his. All right, so here's one of the ways.
Arrogant. It's a miscalculation because again, I think you're right though. The Venezuelan military, whatever else you say about it, I think there is a healthy, normal human response of like, you don't get to dictate who my government is by threatening me, asshole.
And it's also, I think, one that has a certain sophistication as to like, how supported this administration is. So Bolton gets up there with a piece of paper that has one thing written on it, and has somebody done a zero in? It supposedly says like what, 5,000 troops to Colombia. This is like written like 5,000 U.S. troops to Colombia. Now look, they're there. The idea that he is that's the way that they plan their wars is just one line on a yellow piece of paper. That's clearly a means of which to. I don't think this is for domestic consumption. I think it's for consumption from within in Venezuela. This idea that like we could be providing material military support for some type of invasion. And look, it's possible he didn't realize what he was doing, but I can tell you that I did this with Charlie Kirker on the debate. I went out there after seeing Jake talk to him about his, I went out there and I wrote like a 50, I can't remember what it was, but the 503C filings, and wrote that on the outside of my notebook and kept flashing it at him during the debate. I mean, this is not sophisticated psyops here, folks. And I imagine, the Venezuelan military probably has a little bit more sophistication than I do when it comes to what's actually going on. That I don't think
you're both trained by the same people.
That's right. That's right. So here is John Bolton on with Trish Reagan, and I'll tell you something. I'll make this announcement right now. If this new catchphrase of this administration catches on, I may have to go away in some fashion. I'm not sure exactly how, if it'll involve medication or what, or just like
go to your happy place.
Put myself in a rocket and
I'm going to go to Caribbean islands
but
won't be deposed by the United States for like another 10 years.
But if I see anybody on the mainstream media say the words troika of tyranny in any other way other than quoting what Bolton says, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself.
We want everybody to know we're looking at all this very seriously. We don't want any American businesses or investors caught by surprise. They can see what President Trump did yesterday. We're following through on it.
So if you think of a company like Citgo, which is owned by PDVSA, which is the state-run oil company there in Venezuela, we have a lot of those Citgo assets right here in the U.S. Is that something, for example, sir, that you're looking at?
Yeah, well, we're in conversation with major American companies now that are either in Venezuela or, in the case of Citgo, here in the United States. I think we're trying to get to the same end result here. Venezuela is one of the three countries I call the troika of tyranny. It'll make a big difference to the United States economically if we could have American oil companies really invest in and produce the oil capabilities in Venezuela. It'd be good for the people of Venezuela. It'd be good for the people of the United States. We both have a lot at stake here, making this come out the right way.
Well, now, aside from the troika of tyranny, and of course, troika of tyranny in its original translation means they have our oil under their ground. And
I'll use that phrase. The
Kudos.
United States, Colombia, and Brazil are forming a troika of tyranny that are trying to foment a disastrous coup. And there already
but
is.
You got to appreciate the fact that Bolton's out there being very explicit.
Yeah,
right.
That does feel new to me. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they
Bolton.
didn't used to just go on the news and say it out loud that we're doing this for oil money.
Bolton said publicly, and granted it was before he was UN ambassador, but I mean, he said like you could blow off how many stories the UN building, it would make no difference.
Yeah. No,
no. Bolton has been
He's an
publicly
edgelord.
threatening people. Yeah, Bolton's an edgelord. Bolton's been publicly threatening people for ages.
And so this could be their, setting up the American public for this, but I also think it could be they don't feel like they need to set up the American public for this. I think they also feel like they can just do it.
You don't need to set people up for bringing them together.
It's so
you would say we will all come together in a grand coup.
It's so Trumpy. Like, remember when Trump was like, yeah, it's bad what they did to Jamal Khashoggi, but like we have a lot of economic interest with Saudi Arabia, so I don't know.
One guy's life, a lot of oil. It's not even close. The positive news, and we're seeing this maybe in the context of Yemen. Khanna has reintroduced a war powers resolution, or is about to end our involvement in the Yemen civil war. And here he is on Democracy Now!, I think it was yesterday or the day before, talking about, just broadly speaking, the failures of U.S. intervention and regime change.
And criticizing that. I mean, for all of our legitimate concerns about Russian interference in our elections, where we get concerned if a journalist appears on Russian television and a member of Congress talks to them, imagine if someone were calling the opposition in our country. We would be furious, justifiably furious. And so it makes no sense that our vice president would be calling and interfering in politics in Venezuela. What we ought to be doing is working through international institutions and laws, calling for human rights, but not getting involved in a potential civil war. And again, this is no defense of Maduro. Everyone recognizes that there have been extrajudicial killings there, that his economic policies have led to hyperinflation. But the reality is that when we have intervened in places like Syria, in places like Libya, what has the consequence has been that things have gotten worse. And for some reason, the people who have led all these interventions are still able to dictate American foreign policy. It's almost as if failure is the qualification to be part of dictating what we should be doing in Venezuela.
And that's, in addition to him being absolutely right about the repeated failures of our intervention, even ones that, if there have been any, that were done with the best of intentions, our record of success is extremely low. Did pretty good in World War II to a certain extent, obviously. But when we get into, when we're talking about non-World War situations, things have not worked out so well, particularly when we're talking about intra-country conflicts. And so, but he also, I think, does a good job there of explaining, like, this is how you can be critical of a leader, and there are mechanisms in which we have to hopefully impact and push other leaders to be better or to be gone in some fashions, or to strengthen the ability of people to have some form of self-determination. But it has to stop when it becomes some form of intervention.
Well, and again, I mean, the alternative to this coup and this right-wing force that people like Mexico are putting, countries like Mexico are putting forward, is diplomacy. And also, I have to say, I mean, I'll get to this more tomorrow, potentially, but Bernie Sanders, like a lot of people were annoyed about his tweets because, he opposed the intervention, but still was quite critical of Maduro. And I had some annoyance with that too. But speaking, I know someone who's in contact with people in the foreign ministry of the Bolivarian government, and they were like, those tweets were great. Like, they're not expecting Bernie Sanders to come out and go like, and Nicolas Maduro should get a medal. Like, the people who are still sincere inside that government, which I think there's definitely a lot of people that are, and that a government has achieved some amazing things and obviously also had failings. They're not blind to the problems and things that need to be changed either. In fact, as usually the case, they're the ones that are the most sincere about making those changes.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if a President Bernie really wanted to undo the damage back to zero that the U.S. has done to that country and other countries in Latin America, they'd be paying reparations for all of the sanctions that they've imposed on these governments in order to make them fail.
And or the death squads that they've unleashed.
Yeah, they could unkill some of the people there too. Why not?
All right, folks, going to head to the fun half in a moment. Just a reminder, it's 2019. Find the software that fits your business needs using Capterra.com. Capterra is the leading it's free. Look at that. It's free. Online resource to help you find the best software solution for business. It aggregates over 700 specific categories of software, from project management to email marketing to yoga studio management. Capterra makes it easy to discover the right solution fast. Visit Capterra.com/majority for free. Today, find the right tools to make 2019 the year for your business. Capterra.com/majority. It's just fun actually going through there and just seeing all the different martial arts software. Look at it. Micro learning software. I don't know what that is. Capterra.com/majority. That's Capterra, CAPTERRA.com/majority. All right, we're going to head into the fun half of the program. Just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. By becoming a member, you support the free show every day, and as a way of saying thank you, we give you extra content every day. Also, it's commercial free, the podcast that you get served by becoming a member. And then occasionally we get some other goodies. Occasionally, some advance. No, only the members got the what do you call it? Brandon Straka video. He put up one, but mine was done from my perspective, so a little bit different. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, and chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Today is Wednesday. That means yesterday was Tuesday, but tomorrow is Thursday, and thus the Michael Brooks Show.
Well, usually, of course, we're on Tuesday, but this week and next week, Thursday, because we have been victims of the government shutdown. Tomorrow, and we're starting a bit earlier tomorrow, we're starting around 6. Bill Fletcher Jr. is the guest. We're talking about, right now, anti-austerity and labor uprisings in Zimbabwe and Sudan. We're going to give you a really sort of in-depth rundown on those situations, how these currents are playing out in different parts of Africa. Then we're going to talk about the revolutionary Amilcar Cabral. And then the first half of the show is going to be dedicated to Venezuela analysis in the post-game. We've got some classic clips to play. We have a review of my latest appearance on Israeli television with a truly mind-blowing Mayo brain. You're not going to want to miss that. This Sunday, an illicit history of CLR James and a critique of identity politics with Nigerian British writer Ralph Leonard. Patreon.com/TMBS. Get the whole thing. And there's literally a handful of tickets left if you want to come see us February 1st at the Bell House.
Jamie.
So out now on the Antifada, we have an episode we did with Leslie Lee III from the excellent podcast Struggle Session. If any of you, for some reason, have not checked it out yet, you should definitely do so. They talk about, culture from a leftist perspective. They're super good. So we finally talk about The Handmaid's Tale, or as I might like to say, The Handmaid's Fail. And we talk about why Resistance TV is so bad. And then we go into a series of movies called The Purge, which Leslie Lee turned us on to late past, I realize. But we talk about why, especially the most recent movie, The First Purge, is such a better example of resistance movie in this white supremacist capitalist hell world. So check it out, folks. Patreon.com/theantifada.
Matt?
House of the Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne is what's available on Literary Hangover most recently.
All right, folks. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy, back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy, back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost has what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dannerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks. Reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck them.
Almost has what? Almost says what?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Let's go right to the phones. Where are we here? Go to a 610. 610, where are you calling from? Who's this?
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, this is Sophia. I'm calling from New York. I'm not Mike from PA, even though I have his area code.
Oh, I see. All right,
I'm
that's
calling
good.
because... Oh, sorry?
Go ahead.
I'm calling because you brought up something that I'm interested in. The other day you took your kids to the Brooklyn Museum and you were talking about not wanting to go into the Sackler wing for feminist art because of the complicity that the Sacklers have had in the opioid crisis.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've been following. I know it's not something you cover generally because it's not like an art podcast, but it's something that I've been following pretty closely because there's an artist I'm really interested in named Nan Golden. She's a pretty famous photographer, and she's founded this activist group.
I think we played the video of, I mean, I'm familiar with her work, a few artists I probably am familiar with on some level.
Okay. Big.
She was big in the 90s. I think that's probably why, when I was engaged in the culture around me.
They're still teaching her in photography courses in colleges.
The Sacklers gave a big amount of money for a wing at the Natural History Museum where they brought in basically big Egyptian artifacts and reconstructed almost an Egyptian temple, I guess. And she led.
Is that at the Museum of Natural History or the Met?
That was at the Met, yeah.
Was it the Met?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was the Museum of Natural History. I guess it was the Met.
Yeah, because they had that big protest where they had the die-in and they threw all the pill bottles into the atrium.
It's the Met I'm thinking of is where the Egyptian exhibit is. I'm sorry, I have the Natural History Museum in my mind. But that was at the Met. And she had, led a big protest there. It's the only kind, and I always remember of that when I'm in that situation.
Yeah, well, it's not the only protest she's held. She did one at the Sackler. I don't know if it's an entire museum or if it's just a wing at the Harvard Art Museum. She's been doing it at the Smithsonian because there's the Freer Sackler Gallery down in D.C. And so I've been kind of following like the lawsuits and the legal developments around basically trying to hold the Sacklers accountable. I've read a couple of op-eds that are very angry that Elizabeth Sackler, who, founded the oh, sorry, I tried to walk into the hallway so that there wouldn't be noise, but there's people here. I was reading these op-eds about Elizabeth Sackler and how she and her father didn't actually ever make money off of the sale of OxyContin because her father, Arthur Sackler, his brothers bought out his share of Purdue Pharma in the 80s, and OxyContin didn't hit the market until 1995. So it's kind of like this whole thing where where they want you to feel like you don't have to feel guilty going to the Elizabeth Sackler Center for Feminist Art because she didn't benefit. Her money's not from OxyContin. Her money's from the sale of Valium in the 60s, which was also very aggressively marketed.
Right.
So, that's much better. But I guess the reason I'm calling in and wanted to talk about this a little bit is because I feel like when we the Met is saying it's reviewing its policies for accepting funds, and they're going to be more of sticklers about where the money is coming from. But I wonder if we had a different setup, maybe what the European Union has, if we would even need all these philanthropists supporting arts institutions, because we were watching, you showed that clip from Davos, and it's stop talking about philanthropy, start talking about taxes. In France, which obviously has some of the most beautiful museums in the world and the most well-funded museums in the world, they don't have the same tradition of philanthropy that we have, because, the state, takes care of its institutions, and they actually really take a lot of pride in their culture and stuff, and in a way that the United States just doesn't. It's all about big patrons here, and making your patrons feel good and feel represented by
well, that's the extortion too, right? You've got to let us be billionaires, otherwise you don't get things like art or museums or classical musical halls or stuff like that. That's the extortion. On some level.
Well, right. I remember when I was in college, I did this interview to try to get a scholarship to study abroad. There were these two rich patrons who were, interviewing people to decide whether they were worth the money to send them abroad. And I didn't get the scholarship because I got into an argument with them over this museum called the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia. That's where I went to school. And the Barnes Foundation used to be in this mansion in a suburb called Lower Merion, and it was super inaccessible. It's a world-class collection that has all these priceless impressionist pieces that if you ever go, which I highly recommend, it's wonderful. But they were holding it in this mansion in the suburbs that no one could get to because it wasn't accessible by public transportation. This guy died in I think the 40s or the 50s, the guy who collected all the artwork, and he stipulated in his will that yes, this will be a museum, but you can't move the collection. It has to be in this mansion. And there was a big to-do about they've moved the collection into Center City, Philadelphia, so that it's actually accessible to people. And there was a big to-do about not meeting the stipulations left by the donor, this guy that's been dead for 60 years and had no idea what the future would look like. And I got into an argument with the people who were giving the scholarship because they're very wealthy, and they were saying, it's really important to respect the patron's wishes, because otherwise other billionaires might not want to donate their collections, and they might just keep them if you don't, keep the billion.
Well, that was I was wondering, what happens. First off, Sophia, good job for you. Way to work that interview. Well done.
I didn't get to go to England, so whatever.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But it made for a good anecdote
what would happen?
On the Majority Report.
Yeah, what would happen to that? Those pieces? Okay, fine, we can't move it. We'll just let them just rot away
in private
the
collection. We'll make it even more inaccessible. Can I just say that because I feel like we're having a nice little art couple of minutes here, and unfortunately, if people are following this and they have more recent piece, but this is as of November 19th, 2018. There's a local union, 30 members were protesting around MoMA, I believe. So there's a lot of, MoMA PS1 in Long Island City. So there's also a lot of union work around the staff at these places as well. And it's just, that's really messed up. Just the idea that there is this big disconnect between that art is a leisure activity and something of the whims of the upper class is terrible.
Oh yeah, art has been totally ruined by capitalism. Totally. Why should art be used for rich people to park their capital in? Why art should be for everyone? I'm also thinking about remember when the Brooklyn Museum hired the head of the African art department, and it was a white woman. And then I started to look further into it, and most major museums do not have a single Black person working in their African art departments curating art. What the hell?
Well, yeah, since I've graduated from college and I'm not going to art museums constantly for class requirements and stuff, I've definitely started to question their relevance. Not in general. Obviously, I think art is important and people should be able to see it. But the way that institutions are set up, I've interviewed for a lot of arts positions, and when I go and interview for these entry level positions, it's the hierarchy is there's some wealthy white women at the top who work from home 3 days a week, and then they'll come into the office 2 days a week to dole out jobs for all the entry level. It's all these, again, young women working in the arts who are making shit money.
Well,
and
that's
you all kind of give up eventually and move on to something more lucrative. But
that's what the guys that Guy Debord was running with back in the late 60s in France, they had a couple of things to say about that. I think they would actually stab some art at the time. But Sophia, I appreciate the call.
Thanks.
It kind of reminds me of this tweet from our friend Jonathan Chait the other day about the journalism and the media. where he was like, hey, I think he got most of the way there. He's like, I think it's clear at this point in time that the market is not going to support the amount of journalism that a healthy democracy needs if it's done on a for-profit basis. So I think rich people philanthropists should step in.
Right.
Like if it's a public good, it's almost like it should be publicly funded.
It's nuts. Or at the very least, what you need to do is there's another way of doing it where you don't have to, it gets sticky, right? To fund journalism as the government on some level. But there's another way that you can subsidize it without getting it caught up in the stickiness of having the government fund journalism. That is, fund a lot of the expenses that the journalists have, so that you fund for all professions, and therefore the sort of the amount of revenue that needs to be kicked off by these things gets diminished.
Universal programs.
Indeed. All right, this is fun to watch. Look, it's pretty rare I get to watch somebody who I really loathe talk about somebody else who I loathe. No, not this guy who I loathe. The other guy. This is Christie, who apparently, I didn't realize this, but is still alive and still gets invited back onto television shows. I don't know what he's doing. Is he working at a law firm, doing some lobbying or something, probably, right? But this is how you know that Christie has given up on his dream to be Donald Trump's manservant. I give you Christie with, is it Margaret Hoover on, well, look how we've fallen, firing line.
I want to talk about Jared Kushner because, frankly, it comes down that he's the one who fired you, right?
That's what Steve Bannon told me, yes.
And you believe that?
Sure.
Right. You believe that because there's history between the two of you.
Between me and his father, not between me and him.
But you can understand why he takes it personally.
Yes and no.
Would you separate your experience if your father had been put in jail from the prosecutor who put him in jail?
If my father was guilty, I would. Mr. Kushner pled guilty. He admitted the crimes. And so what am I supposed to do as a prosecutor? I mean, if a guy hires a prostitute to seduce his brother-in-law and videotapes it and then sends the videotape to his sister to attempt to intimidate her from testifying before a grand jury, do I really need any more justification than that? I mean, it's one of the most loathsome, disgusting crimes that I prosecuted when I was U.S. attorney. And I was U.S. attorney in New Jersey, Margaret, so we had some loathsome and disgusting crime going on there.
There you go. I enjoy that clip for a number of reasons.
I mean,
One,
tell me to lie. I mean,
the best part is just how much glee Christie is getting in repeating that.
He's like, yeah, I'd be totally happy to refresh everybody's memory on just how utterly despicable the Kushner family is.
It's funny you say that because I have a computer here with a whole keynote address with the graphics.
I have the PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's enjoyable.
Amazing,
but it's an indication. I don't think Christie does that even 6 months ago.
No, it's over.
It is that ship has sailed.
Trump got cucked on the shutdown, and he wants to take a little tour back on TV.
I think so. Remember, it was Jared Kushner who thought, like, we're really going to be able to. I've marshaled in this whole criminal justice reform. So classic. Did not understand that this thing was already basically done. Right? They brought him a baked cake, and he thought he made it from scratch.
This is going to be just like the
Israeli-Palestinian
conflict.
Exactly. But it
will
didn't
be
work
the
out
same.
that way.
I have an idea. I'm going to hire a hooker and give it to my sister's husband, and then she'll get the tape, and then they'll give me the money.
How does that... I don't understand how that intimidates her from... I mean, I don't know enough
Well,
of the story.
because she'll see the tape, and she'll feel very upset, and then I'll get the money.
But wait a second. But if the wife sees the tape, she's not going to go in and testify what? Against whom?
Well, I think, no, I think she wanted to obviously drive a wedge between the wife and the dude.
I see.
Yeah, that was the play.
Okay.
She'll see the other woman, and then she'll go to Pilates even more, and then she'll be distracted, and then I'll get the money. Hold on 1 second. I have a call on the other line. No, we're not turning the heat on.
Meanwhile, speaking of a laugh riot, here's Dave Rubin. I'll tell you what's interesting about this tweet, which is I don't follow Dave Rubin's tweets that often. Well, that's not true either, but this one was actually somewhat interesting to me. Let's go. Can you play the original video that he's reacting to? Somebody, the Susan B. Anthony list. Are they the anti-abortion? Who's Susan Anthony? But here it is. A state delegate. Yes, working to save babies. Okay, so let's play the video. The fact of the matter is that third trimester abortions, virtually every single one of them, is a medical necessity. That there is some measure of danger to the mother. Or we're talking about fetuses that will not survive more than a couple of days, if that, outside the womb, because some people born without a spine.
Competition would start kicking in.
Here is this is, I guess, coming from New York, I think, according to this. I'm not quite sure, but let's listen to it, because the impact it's having on Dave Rubin is both stunning and totally predictable, because this dude has already figured out what his business plan is.
Delegate Tran.
Yes, sir.
How late in a pregnancy would your bill apply if a physician was simply willing to certify that the continuation of the pregnancy would impair the mental health of the woman? How late are we talking about?
Well, so the way the suggestion that we've made in the bill is to say it's in the third trimester and at the, with the certification of the physician. So
how late in the third trimester would you be able to do that?
It's very unfortunate that our physicians, witnesses, were not able to attend today to speak specifically.
No, I'm talking about your bill. How late in the third trimester could a physician perform an abortion if he indicated it would impair the mental health of the woman?
The mental health
or physical health?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm talking about the mental health.
So through the third trimester. The third trimester goes all the way up to 40 weeks.
Okay, but to the end of the third trimester.
Yep. I don't think we have a limit in the bill.
So,
speechless.
Where it's obvious that a woman is about to give birth, she has physical signs that she is about to give a birth. Would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified? She's dilating.
Oh my God.
Mr. Chairman, that would be a decision that the doctor, the physician, and the woman would make.
I understand that. I'm asking
point.
if your bill allows that.
My bill would allow that, yes.
All right, so let's just talk about what this is. You need a licensed physician to make an assessment that a woman's health, could be mental health, could be physical health, but a woman's health is in peril enough that continuing of the pregnancy is wrong or not medically indicated. There is no example of a woman dilating where a physician has or would sign off on that. There's just simply no example of it. There's 24 hours. And there's a nuclear weapon in the bottom of a well with a kidnapped child, and
right.
We've got to torture everybody because I've seen this on TV.
Think about it.
So this is just absurd, right? This is just absurd. Here is Dave Rubin responding to this a video with the following. This strikes me as true evil. Are any Democrats or anyone on the left pushing back on this? And, I've noticed he's been doing this calculation lately quite a bit. I consider myself begrudgingly pro-choice. Up to 20 weeks, he says. What does this mean? Begrudgingly pro-choice.
He knows that it's bad, but he's willing to compromise so you
Does
can
he
kill
even know
like
what the
some
trimester
kinds of
system
babies.
is? I don't even.
But it's getting harder and harder to even say that. Now, why would this is him working the pivot? Like, I've thought about how would I become a conservative as a.
I have a
we've
very
contemplated this
specific
many
guess.
times, right?
I think yes, we have contemplated.
We've
how to
contemplated
become
this because, like, we just as a lark. Like, how would you do it?
Yes,
And
I think that this means that whatever this new Patreon system him and Peterson are talking about might end up fusing with the new Blaze merger, and that Glenn Beck Peterson Rubin fusion could be in the pipeline.
Here's my prediction, ladies and gentlemen. Within 6 months, Dave Rubin will call himself begrudgingly pro-life.
I was talking with Bo Snodder.
I saw another video that made me decide that there was a state senator who presented a bill I didn't like, and therefore women don't have autonomy over their bodies. I was forced into this position.
Did you see
like
this
who comes up with their positions on this based upon this?
Did you see this
Who is
clip
in
of
any
this-
way anything but disingenuous?
of this sign language interpreter for the city council in Tulsa? That's pretty bad stuff. I think I can't support legal abortions anymore.
Yeah, exactly. He is going to be like he's going to hire a producer who's going to be like, you've got to get me the video or the article that's going to be the one that I pivot off of being
Oh, he'll
pro-life.
retweet those fake Planned Parenthood videos from like 4 years ago.
There'll
that
be
are already-
something like that.
Yeah, they're already like literally have led to criminal convictions, and he'll just retweet them out like, had no idea. This is really bad.
Didn't he have a book that he was writing?
Yeah,
he was
working on
writing
ideas.
a book, and
It's
he's
bad ideas.
probably had to rechange. Probably had to read because 2 years ago he was writing a book. And
I couldn't work my way through the John
I
Stuart Mill
found
Wikipedia
I
article.
didn't have to do the book because I just realized I could just go to the right with my podcast.
2 years ago was really hard because it was like, I'm going to write a whole book on ideas and freedom. And then all of a sudden it was just like, hey, I'm gay, but I support fascists. And all of it just came along.
I remember the day I realized that I could support total intellectual freedom and be against a woman's sovereignty over her own body. And that was the day I realized I can quadruple my revenue year over year if I can just invite on a couple more people to the right.
Yeah, I live in this stuff. I think about ideas all the time. And one of the ideas I encountered that really disturbed me was this clip of an assistant toll meter made in Milwaukee saying that mothers should be able to actually kill their kids 6 months after birth. Are any Democrats going to speak out on this?
I did a
This is really
classic
disturbing.
80-20 analysis of what I was doing and decided I'm not going to be pro-choice anymore.
Well, it's weird.
Ideas.
Because, like, when he says it's getting harder and harder to even say abortion is okay at all, what's happening in his brain? Like, is he going through a religious conversion? It's like he feels
that could
coming
happen.
on. Like,
Yeah, it's as if
that could happen.
like this does not implicate abortions up to 20 weeks at all. At all.
Well, maybe us SJWs are pushing it too
If
far
you,
and causing a backlash, like all the IDW people say.
If you want to look at it in terms of archetypes, this is a classic captivity narrative he's pulling off here.
When he started his hustle, he was, because I mean, one is like he obviously has this very malleable personality, because he just sort of defers to anybody he's primarily talking to.
I don't want to credit him with too much thought behind all of this.
But
I
it's
think
like in the
more
beginning, it was Sam Harris and atheism, but now it's like, there Ben Shapiro's around and Jordan Peterson's around and a little bit of, he did the stuff with Glenn Beck a while ago. So, there's another marketplace there and there's new things to consider.
Look, raccoons are considered very smart for animals. But if you watch a raccoon, and I've actually spent a lot of time.
I know
I don't want to
you've
explain
made
this,
us watch raccoons.
But if you watch a raccoon looking for food, they cover everywhere. And then when they find the food, they just keep going back to that place and they keep going after it. So it's not like they look at structures and say, there's food there. It's just that they comb everywhere and then they find it. And I feel like that's what he's doing. It's just like, I'm going to cross the entire plateau, I'm going to cover every inch of this plains. And wherever I start to find something that will, nourish me. I'm talking about cash. I'm going to just keep hovering around that area. And that's what it feels like.
I found that talking about late-term abortion was very nourishing.
Yeah, I would not degrade the good name of raccoons by comparing them to Dave Rubin. I think they are noble creatures. They are clearly some kind of Antifa anarchists with those little masks on.
That's
and
true.
I think Slavoj Žižek might be one. So much smarter than
my
Dave
chickens
Rubin.
just came in the
Much
mail.
smarter and much nicer.
Didn't need government to do that.
Also, I would encourage everyone to read Jezebel's interview with a woman who had an abortion at 32 weeks, because it's a really tough situation to be in. Anyone who has a late-term abortion like that has a wanted pregnancy that has gone wrong. And the amount of unnecessary cruelty that these laws inflict on people who are already going through a heartbreaking situation is despicable.
Horrific. Let's go to the IMs. No thanks, Tulsi. Hi, guys. Pretty disgusted by Jimmy Dore's comment about not caring about India. You can't be a leftist without wanting leftism to be international. I feel that Jimmy and Tucker belong on a spectrum. I don't think Jimmy is racist, but I can imagine people watching both programs and belonging on the extreme right wing. Love the show. Left is best.
So apparently a lot of people, because we obviously covered this, and I covered this on TMBS because I find particularly that type of sentiment to just be really disgusting, and I agree completely with the IM. But I guess in the nature, because you guys, you covered yesterday that apparently Rogan realized later that the thing was a hoax.
Yeah.
So apparently at the end of the podcast, Jimmy said that was the wrong thing to say. So. I don't think it's exculpatory, in my opinion, from the analysis. But whatever. I'll put that. I'm trying to be more Christ-like, as Matt would say. So it's like,
what does that mean though? It's a wrong thing to say. Like
it was like the wrong sentiment. I don't know. People are reporting it to me. Look, I'm just putting it out there. I don't know if he meant. I get what you're saying. I don't think he meant like I probably shouldn't have said that strategically. I think it was a little bit more like, it didn't sound right.
Yeah, he meant I'm just doing what about it. I didn't mean to imply that I don't care about India. I mean to be doing what about it. But
which is also really bad.
And his whataboutism, he acts like, well, we're in bed with Israel too. Well, it's like Tulsi's not great on that either. So
Tulsi's. I mean, actually, that would be interesting. Like if you actually put me in a room and you said like support between like allegiance to like Modi or Netanyahu, that would actually be a very interesting debate. And you could make a pretty compelling case that the person connected to India would be less damaging because any challenge to just that sort of infrastructure in the Middle East would be worthwhile. But yeah, I mean, whatever. I'm just trying to, the same way Tulsi Gabbard, who obviously I'm very much not interested in as a presidential candidate, she's tweeted some good stuff about Venezuela. So I'm going to give, props where props are due.
Jonathan Armstead, thanks for showing the clip of Kamala talking about poverty and billionaires yesterday. I hope as this goes on, she becomes less awkward when answering questions like this. Of all the Dems who've announced so far, who do you think will speak the most about poverty? I back John Edwards over Obama in the 08 primary because how good he was on it. He was very good on it. That's actually where I was more of an Edwards guy. Didn't work out.
Let's go to the top, Johnny boy.
I mean, poverty. I mean, part of the problem with Edwards is that he also had that problem of like, you were in the Senate and you didn't do anything about this stuff at all. And then you started. Now, when he left the Senate, Edwards, he went on a big initiative that was, and he was very actually also, if I remember correctly, he was going out and marching with the unions. I mean, and I remember distinctly having a conversation at the time he was doing this, when there was no indication he was going to run for office, with my producer at the time. We were both like, this guy, talk about pandering. But if this is the kind of pandering he's doing, great.
Can I also say, I don't even know what he's been up to the last couple of years, but I mean, I think he's a little overly demonized. Maybe that's an unpopular take, but I just think like in a world where like Newt Gingrich is like sought after,
I think it's more just the close call aspect of it.
No, I mean, look, whatever. I'm not saying it was good. I'm just saying, like, I don't know that it was like stuff that meant that like he shouldn't be on like television again or talking about national politics again.
Well, he also, that would have been a big problem if he had been the nominee.
Oh, no doubt about that.
And I think that was what
pretty
I think
right.
people were a little bit You know, we didn't need another round of that. Remember, you're only 8 years out. You had Bush, and you had Bush because a lot of people felt because of Bill Clinton's actions.
What?
So,
but
not
to answer the question,
because he was a cuck.
To answer the question, like everybody's going to talk a lot about poverty. Talking about inequality is a little bit different. And I think the person who's going to talk the most about inequality, judging from past experience, is Bernie Sanders. Going to go out on a limb there.
Guess that you were going to say that.
Of those announced, because Bernie isn't technically announced yet, though I think that's happening very soon, Elizabeth Warren. But I actually don't. I think inequality she's talking about, and I think inequality, obviously, Bernie will talk about poverty, actually, as a specific category. I don't hear from really anyone, except for occasionally Bernie.
Yeah, there's lowering the
maybe
ceiling and
if
raising
Sherrod
the
Brown,
floor.
If Sherrod Brown gets in there. Right.
Yeah, I could see Sherrod Brown talk about it more. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Julian Castro do that.
That's true.
Because that is, you know, sort of, that is, I would imagine that's that.
But more than talking about it, though, we should look at what they're proposing to do about it. And when you go up there and say, like, knowledge is the currency of the future, like school is the answer to poverty, like, don't listen to them.
Well, of course, I think you know, he's coming from HUD, right?
Yeah,
and so he's probably well suited to talk about that.
I think literally there is only one argument for Julian Castro's candidacy, and that is, could you imagine the emotional state of Donald Trump if a Mexican cuck defeats him? That's it.
Jobby, when I heard Kamala Harris speak about displaying the badge of her office and throwing poor people in jail, I heard a bully. This is especially bad when you know that she showed extreme deference in not prosecuting Bank One and Mnuchin when thousands of charges she could have pursued. I'm afraid this is how she would govern as president. Karen Sullivan County. Sorry if you heard this one. Why doesn't the CIA ever engineer a coup in the U.S.? Because there's no U.S. embassy here.
1963.
Adam Cokehead. Hey, man, it's going to be 70 in Chicago tomorrow, minus 70, and they will have 5 buses grabbing homeless people as mobile warming stations. This is our future. It's happened faster than scientists thought. There should be riots in the streets. Kill capitalism. Please have Matt Brunig on the show. He's got some great critiques of MMT and some good ideas on capitalism, socialism, People's Index Fund, Elizabeth Warren, and many other topics. Please. Have we not had him on this show?
He's definitely been on the show. Maybe
He's
not
been
recently.
on both. Yeah,
I've done Ring of Fire with him multiple times. I can't remember.
Have him on again. He always has good ideas.
Ram Saint.
He has good ideas.
Hey, Sam, just wanted to point out that contractors in certain sectors of government are responsible for a lot more than supplemental services like janitorial and food. I work for a small sub-agency in the National Weather Service that deploys and monitors weather buoys all over the world as software developer. Literally every employee in this agency, from developers to engineers and scientists, is a contractor. The only feds are management and administration. Max in Phoenix watched Devil We Know documentary yesterday. If I was ever asked how health care would be paid for, I would say DuPont. DuPont will pay for it, and 3M, and any of the companies that created health problems in the first place. The Devil We Know is about that case we spoke to Pap about. I've talked about it quite a bit on DuPont and C8. Glass Seagull, question for Medicare for All. Is there a mechanism to ensure that employers pass on their health care savings to employees? I don't think there is a mechanism, but I would imagine what that is that there's going to be competition would kick in for those employees on some level. I mean, they're, if GM is relieved of health care costs, and they're competing for workers with Ford, I think, look, there is a very strong argument that single payer, you're still going to have issues without a robust antitrust regime. Whether it's, because you have still a single payer system. Now, Medicare theoretically will impose cost controls, but antitrust has got to be a big part of, I think, of any attempts to make sure that wealth is redistributed. You need taxation, and you need a broad-based universal set of social insurance and health. But you need to make sure that there is genuine competition in terms of hiring in that respect.
I believe the other mechanism is called a union.
Yeah.
You can form a union and make your boss give you the savings from not paying for health care. It's great. Just do it.
Absolutely. And I think the more you have an antitrust regime that inhibits the power of corporations, the more likely you're going to have, easier time unionizing.
Oh, yeah. Like if we had a president who was like a real pro-union soc dem, they could absolutely clear the way for a mass wave of unionization on the part of workers.
Kreitz, I've suggested a guest who you may have interviewed before. She's a tort lawyer who held a gun manufacturer to account for selling a dangerously faulty rifle scope. Her name is Gina Romano. I feel like I have. Turnip Beg, Sam, what's a persuasive rebuttal to people who say 1 or 10% already pay their fair share of taxes because they pay for the majority of income tax revenue? What is the persuasive rebuttal? Well, they pay more in actual dollars than other people, but it is commensurate with how much benefit they have gotten from society and the structure of society. I mean, look, the fact is they won the lottery, and that lottery was set up because people pay in taxes to structure society a certain way. And that ended up benefiting them in an inordinate amount and disproportionate relative to their fellow citizens. So they have a disproportionate responsibility of putting back into the system. That's all.
And don't forget, capital gains are taxed at a much lower rate than actual wage labor. And that's how most of the ruling class makes most of their money. They sit on their butts, people work for them, or their pre-existing capital works for them, and they pocket the difference between, the value created and what they pay the people. So really, it's not a fair system to begin with, and they should be paying way more. They're lucky that they even have this position in the first place.
I think that it's not even a question. I mean, on some level, I think getting into questions of fairness and not fairness, I think, I think that makes for good political rhetoric. But the bottom line is that it is destabilizing for society. These people have benefited incredibly from society. Their trucks go on the roads a lot more than my trucks do. And they are obligated to pay because society is going to decide ultimately that to have this type of wealth inequality is just not healthy. And but you can hit it. I guess it's just a function of who's listening to as to which one of those is going to be more.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive either.
Apathetic steamroller. The troika of tyranny doesn't sound that good. How about the terrible trio, or maybe a devil's triangle? Winnipeg Craig, I'm getting concerned about how many online self-described leftists are talking shit about Warren. I know it's not fully representative, but it's still alarming how many of them think she's some sort of establishment tool or corporate shill, and who say it's Bernie or nothing, and that Tulsi is you're hanging out in the wrong circles, Winnipeg Craig. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, I've seen people be a little bit meaner to Warren than I think is warranted online. I've seen her get called a neoliberal, which feels a little unfair.
That's what annoys me about that is two things. I mean, one is actually, I should say three things. One, in a lot of ways, she's a good candidate. She deserves props. Two, though, when you start to use neoliberalism like that, you give idiots like Jonathan Chait, who've tried to delegitimize the use of that word, a lot of ammunition. And three,
what does
I
that
think
word
that
even
there are
mean?
actually really valid, important critiques of Elizabeth Warren, which you undermine by being an idiot about it. I don't know. It's just such a bad idea on so many levels.
All right, let's go. We got some pretty good. Well, let's listen to Elizabeth Warren is
with a good idea.
She's talking to her on her wealth tax, and who's she talking to? She's talking to O'Donnell, right? And here she is explaining the wealth tax. There has been some skepticism as to folks' ability to capture wealth tax, because apparently wealthy people will hide it. But we have that same problem with income tax too, frankly.
Make them do it.
Yeah, there's places you can see the cash. You can get some of it. And it's also, I think, just like, I think as important as the revenue, as important as diminishing the wealth that these people have is. I mean, it is important, I think. I think is like having such wealth inequality, not just income inequality, but wealth inequality, is also destabilizing and unhealthy for a society. It's also signifying to the society a certain set of values, and it's reinforcing that notion that to have a healthy and successful society, you need to have one that is more egalitarian. Here is Elizabeth Warren on that proposed wealth tax.
So here's what we know projected this year is the tippy top, the 0.1% will pay in total taxes that they pay about 3.2% of their total wealth. That's the whole thing all in. The 99% will pay more than double that, about 7.2% of their total wealth. So part of what this is about is just to say, the playing field looks like this. Could we just make it look a little bit more like this? Could we just level the playing field a little bit? And then here's the key part. This would produce revenue about $2.75 trillion over the next 10 years. How about we invest that in childcare so that hardworking families get some relief? How about we invest that in reducing the student loan debt burden so young people who are trying to get a start in life, who want to do startups and want to try to buy homes and can't do it because of student loans, get some relief? How about we invest that in a Green New Deal to help protect this planet? How about we invest it in the things that help us build a future that's good for our economy? And that's what the wealth tax is all about.
So the pitch is, one part we need to have less wealth inequality, and two part, and look at all the good stuff we'll get for it.
I think, that's great. That's a good policy idea. She's definitely the best candidate in the race so far, in my estimation. I think, maybe it's just a stylistic preference, but I do think there is something in the moment now of when someone like Bernie also turns the heat on a little bit and doesn't just which is interesting because she does that really well in hearings with bankers. She eviscerates them. And I think she could bring that in TV appearances a little bit more. But even just like the one we played a couple of weeks ago where Bernie was talking about a worker's wages in Iowa. He had a specific example of a woman who had been working barely above minimum wage for 10 years. And he's just like, that's bullshit. And the crowd just erupted because it is. It's disgusting. And that's the only thing. I mean, it's stylistic, but I think it matters. I would like to see, and I know she has it because she does an amazing job in those hearings when she actually does it to bankers personally, which should be all of her campaign ads, should just be montages of her great performances in those hearings.
Yeah, people are pissed off, man, and she needs to be channeling that if she wants to win. And I think people's reactions to her, especially the vibe she had in that last clip, are going to be very heavily dependent on whether or not they liked the teacher that she most reminds them of.
I'm actually kind of okay with her stylistic, the tippy top stuff. If her policy was a bit more bold, I think you can raise more than 2%, 3%, go to 5%, and then, but you use that same thing as you're just talking about the tippy top, and then you seem more reasonable. Let Bernie do the more bomb throwing stuff.
I don't know, 2 to 5%. That's not, from a rhetorical standpoint. I think what's more interesting to me is on the get side. I mean, so like focus on the material benefits that are going to come from it. 5% of the wealth, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Well, rhetorically, it doesn't matter, but 5% would be a big number.
Yeah, that's actually a very
big number.
Bruning. I forget. Bruning crunched those number differences. Those are actually significant.
Well, maybe she's an incrementalist, and we'll make it to 5%.
All right, let's go. I want to play this too. This is pretty funny. Now, as you know, people have been just so mean to this guy Schultz. What's his name? Howard Schultz. People have been so mean to Howard Schultz.
No, there's a lot to learn from this segment, I think, even about how we conduct ourselves, Sam.
Honestly, folks, look, there was a time in this country where you could respectfully sit down with a billionaire and they would hear you out if you had some complaints about the impact of the way they have constructed their wealth and maybe what they're doing environmental. Like back when I was a kid, I remember if there was a local billionaire, you could go down and just ring the doorbell, and
Fifth Avenue was like a listening post.
Sometimes they would send down their butler or their chauffeur, and they'd come down in the Bentley and they'd pick you up at the gate and drive you back up, and you'd have some tea and sit down and talk, but no more. We get stuff like this that Fox and Friends are pretty upset about.
You egotistical billionaire! Go back to getting ratioed on Twitter! Go back to Davos with the other billionaire elite who think they know how to run the world! That's not what democracy needs!
And then he was escorted out.
So billionaire's a bad word now. Can't make money.
Whatever happened to putting up your hand and saying, my point is, Howard Schultz, congratulations on the success you had, and I'm going to read your book, but if you run, it'll help Donald Trump get elected, and you say you're a Democrat, won't you hurt your cause? That's a conversation. What's with the screaming, the anger, and being tossed out? Can anyone, this is Democrats yelling at Democrats.
I know.
It goes to show you what a formidable candidate he would be, but...
I don't know what is like there's, I have so many mixed emotions when I see this this clip that I can't. One, like, do they really think that, our society is now like is just so, there's protesting like that's never happened in the United States, like that is just like way out of bounds, that one guy at a book reading would point out that you're an elite, but then just this idea that somehow, that this guy yelled at him at a book reading is proof positive this is a formidable candidate.
There's a lot of heat on the street for this candidate.
Yeah.
Well, and also,
they're getting so desperate out there that they have to interrupt his book talk.
Yeah, Soros probably paid that guy. There's also the, if you thought about it for 2 seconds, like, I feel like it would be much, if you wanted to help Howard Schultz, and nothing can help Howard Schultz. The only people benefiting from this are the people grifting off his campaign. But it would be for them to be like, he's pretending to be a moderate, but he's a left-wing Democrat.
This guy's so formidable that yesterday we checked in on his book, From the Ground Up. Get it? A Journey to Reimagine. He's a coffee guy.
That's
from
funny.
The ground up. A journey to, yes. Nobody got that? Nobody got that? A journey to reimagine the promise of America. Well, he's up to 24 whole reviews, ladies and gentlemen. He's gotten 24 reviews, and they are at 2 stars that he's gotten. Let me just see. There's one even that is, I know what it is. Here it is. The 1-star review that he got, the 5-star review he got was not even out yet. I love how people review a book and rate it 1 star because of a person's political aspirations. Aspirations? I I think they misspelled that.
Were they making a Ted Cruz joke?
Aspirations? Isn't that like meaning like you're gasping or something? The book only shipped
they
today.
spelled it wrong.
The book only shipped today, so the reviews are purely political in nature and have nothing to do with the merits of the book. You're welcome to your opinions, but being narrow-minded and not listening to what someone has to say says a lot about where we are as a country.
I like Paul B's review, just titled FOH. Please go away is what the text says. FOH means fuck out of here.
Yeah, just hey Sam, just in case FOH is like the song Juicy, you need a translation.
There you go.
It means fuck out of here.
Susan Kelly says
of course,
lame.
Matt Taibbi wrote a great review in Rolling Stone of the book, which people can look at as well. Yeah.
But ladies and gentlemen, I will cop to the fact that we are a little bit cynical about Howard Schultz around here, and maybe the cynicism isn't warranted. Here is Stephanie Ruhle on MSNBC. She is a former was she a hedge funder? Okay, yeah, she spent 14 years working in the finance industry. She interned for Merrill Lynch while in college.
We all want to be successful.
I mean, look, she comes from finance. That doesn't necessarily. There's some really decent writers and people who have an interesting perspective that come from finance. That's not necessarily disqualifying, but I think sometimes when you're surrounded by people who have a specific attitude about anything, and it could be anything, that sometimes you get a little bit. Sometimes your thinking gets a little bit myopic, and here is Jeff Stein on MSNBC making the case that, or at least pointing out that maybe part of the reason what's animating his problem with a wealth tax is that he's so wealthy.
Jeff, what do you make of Howard Schultz criticizing these tax plans?
Well, if some presidential candidate was proposing a Jeff Stein tax that went after my income specifically and that of 80,000 friends in my income group, I think I would also oppose it and question its merit and validity.
Isn't it fair to say that he could criticize it and not think it's a good plan far beyond how it's going to affect him personally? Isn't it sort of naive to say, well, he wouldn't like it because it wouldn't be good for him? I mean,
I don't know if I would call it naive. I mean,
hold on a second. He would make a whole lot more money sitting around as the CEO of Starbucks than he would being president of the United States.
Okay, that's true. I'm not sure how it's relevant.
It's relevant
I do
in
think
that just because he doesn't like the plan doesn't mean it's because it would hurt him personally.
No, I'm not alleging necessarily that that's why he opposes it, but it's at least worth asking the question and looking at how would he personally benefit from a tax on the rich that would take up a fair share of his wealth. That seems like a perfectly legitimate question to ask.
Well, no, wait a second. It's beyond legitimate because I can explain why someone might not want to be CEO of Starbucks anymore because you don't want to work anymore that hard. But what do you say? Well, but being president would be hard work. Yes, it would also be the most powerful person, arguably, in the world. Certainly,
most prestigious title on the planet.
Be a bit bigger than coffee shop boss.
This is going to be, once you've got your billions and you've been a CEO, maybe you want that experience, and that's a trade-off for money. But I don't know if you'll find too many people who go like, the difference between me paying $500 million or not paying $500 million is just simply public policy. I'll opt for the thing where I'm not paying $500 million. But beyond that, where's the argument that he's made that this is bad policy? I mean, I've watched all of these interviews. Yeah. He hasn't made a single argument that this is bad policy. You could say it's not fair.
Un-American.
You could say it's un-American.
He said it's un-American multiple times. And
it's not going to happen. But this guy has not made the argument that it's bad policy.
He's actually totally contradicted himself on that. Because if you took literally his hyperventilating about the deficit, then you would do that.
There is no argument that it's bad policy. There simply is not. There is not one iota of evidence that anyone alive or dead could produce that someone who has multiple billions of dollars will be any way less productive, personally or for society, if they pay several $100 million more in taxes. There's just no evidence. There's just nothing. You can't even make the argument theoretically because these guys have no difference. There's no way for them to contemplate the difference between having $12 billion or $6 billion.
Well, the argument would be that they would just take their capital and flee somewhere else where they're not imposing that many taxes on them. But that's not even the argument that he's making.
Well, I guess the argument would be, you know what? We could also pass a law that says if you're going to do that, capital flight, enjoy yourself. You can't come back to America.
Yeah, simple.
Boom.
There you go.
And then we could see how many people are willing to leave the country and have their capital leave.
Yeah, they can hide it in offshore accounts.
Well,
but
yes,
clearly, if we were making laws like that, we would also make a law to repatriate that money, right?
But that's not a policy argument. The argument that you can't raise a wealth tax because people will break the law is not a policy argument.
That would be an awesome Howard Schultz press conference. So it's like, look, you shouldn't even do it. We're just going to break the law anyways.
Right.
I'm stealing money from the Treasury right now.
Like if anything,
anyways, I'd like to talk about how my first venti machine taught me about leadership, if I may.
If anything, that's an argument that the laws are not strict enough yet, and we need to make more.
Right. That's an argument that we need
enforcement,
better enforcement.
I hate to do it by your logic, though, but even on these really, really narrow... I mean, this guy said that the deficit is the biggest domestic threat we face, which is actually... really says something because he's been saying so much nonsense that's escaped notice. That's an incredibly irrational, insane thing to say by any measure, whether you're talking like MMT or ecology, whatever. But if you took that literally, which no one ever should, but these idiots on these TV shows should because they're always, babbling about the deficit even still, they should say, well, if that's true, shouldn't there be like a patriot tax to take care of the deficit?
Of course.
Blah, 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 blah.
Right. You're saying that the country's on fire and you're the only one with a huge water tank.
I mean, of course, we wouldn't tax you to give everybody health care and free college. Obviously, we wouldn't want that for general well-being.
Right, but we got to get the deficit down to zero, and you can do this.
Right, yeah, there you go.
This also, and this is sort of a sidelight a little bit, but of the Howard Schultz thing, but it is so indicative what is wrong with our politics. I mean, it's funny, like you get a guy like Howard Schultz who comes in and he's doing this because our politics are broken. Our politics are broken. And people, it's so polarized. And it's to the extent that you can say our politics are broken, it is not because people disagree. All right? That's perfectly legitimate and healthy. I mean, that's why you have politics, right? Is to resolve these disagreements in a way that doesn't end up with people beating each other up or shooting each other. But to the extent that our politics are broken, Howard Schultz, it's almost as if he's doing just like it's a performance art. Like, I'm not going to tell you that our politics are broken. I'm going to show you. And one of the ways is I'm going to, the idea that I can be on 60 Minutes, The View, every cable channel, NPR, every possible outlet that exists. And why am I on these things? Talking about that I'm actually contemplating. I've had a thought that I'm thinking about being president. That's one reason why our politics are broken, because someone can buy themselves into relevance that way for nothing, for having a decent pun on his book from the ground up. What's going to save
We're
America?
Really calling it a decent pun these days, huh?
Well, all puns are bad. But
give yourself where was the Law and Order gavel for that?
APAB.
Forget it.
But all puns are bad.
But Bill Burton, former Obama official, he was in like a communications guy, right? I think. He's basically coming on there to explain why our politics are broken. Now, he's not going to say that. This is the subtext of everything he's saying. Because a billionaire came to him, or a billionaire was looking like, I think I'm going to run for president. Who can I talk to? Who should I talk to? And he talks to some friends, and they're like, oh, well, we have a consultant for you, Bill Burton. He worked for President Obama. And Bill Burton's job, when he shows up at that door, for the time that they sat down and had a drink, right? Whatever it was, a Plaza Club or some club or coffee. They had coffee, or whatever it was. At the top of the Seattle Needle, or floating above, 40 feet on the sound of wherever it was that they met, right, for that first meeting.
In a spaceship.
Right, in a spaceship. Wherever
that nobody knows about.
Wherever you I'm going to fly you to the, to some Caribbean island, or to have a meeting for, a lunch meeting. Wherever they met, Bill Burton's number one job when he walked through that door was convince this guy that he can do it so that I can get paid.
It's like the animated, like Looney Tunes, literally like the cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching,
right.
cha-ching, just like the cash register.
He's just like, how am I going to separate this guy from his money? And then and after the disastrous rollout that Bill Burton probably had a hand in advising,
with
right?
Steve Schmidt.
Yeah, whatever.
The other guy taking advantage of this poor idiot Howard Schultz.
So not only do we get Howard Schultz is on every television show, some dude working for him. What's my job? I am an assistant to the guy thinking about running for president. He gets on Meet the Press Daily and basically is doing an advertisement for his own continued paycheck. That's what this is.
President Barack Obama, and now an advisor to Howard Schultz. Mr. Burton, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thanks, Chuck. Good to talk to you.
Well, let me start with what probably every one of your former colleagues is asking. Number one, are you still a Democrat? And number two, why are you doing this?
I am a Democrat. Been a Democrat my whole life, and am going to continue to be one. I'm doing it because I think Howard's a great guy. And I think that he loves his family. He loves his country. He wants to make America a better place.
Okay. The guy is running for president, supposedly, or thinking about it. And everyone knows this will throw the election perhaps to Trump, maybe. And why is he doing it? Because he's a great guy. He loves his family. Oh, and then somewhere around the line. Oh, and he's doing it for America, too. I forgot about that.
He wants to make America a better place, and I think that being with him on this journey as he figures out whether or not he ought to run for president is pretty exciting. And I will tell you that one of the things that's so great about it, and I've been in politics for a long time, as you can tell from the gray hair on my head, the thing that's so cool about it is that it's Democrats, it's Republicans, there's people who are formerly in the military, former journalists. It's a diversity of people that I've never experienced in politics. And for us to come together and work on this together has been a really amazing experience.
Obviously, you know the way Twitter works and social media. There's a certain op-ed you wrote in 2016 for the Sacramento Bee that's been making the rounds. Let me put up a piece of it. If Stein or Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson eat into Clinton's support even a little, that could matter in a close election. And in the same way, I would bet that Ralph Nader, or at least many of his supporters, wishes that he didn't help to make George W. Bush our 43rd commander-in-chief. I suppose Stein supporters would not want to be in the position of explaining to their kids how they helped make Trump president. Why should you not eat those words today?
A couple of things. Number one, Howard Schultz is not Jill Stein. Jill Stein was in that race because she thought that the two parties were too close together. The two candidates were too close together. What Howard Schultz thinks is that the polar opposites of the parties are so far apart, but the American people are close together. And maybe what we need is a choice for the American people to choose something different, a different path, a different kind of outcome.
Oh, my God. Pause it for a second. That is so beautiful. I hope he's making so much money.
I got to say, though, a little message from Obama, like, more people than you ever met in politics compared to the 2008 presidential campaign I ran. Fuck you.
I think that when that guy came up with that formulation, that he was so proud of himself, honestly. And like, I would be too. Like, I would be like,
oh, that's a good spin.
I would like walk down the hall.
It's transparent, it's obvious, but
does
it's good spin.
I mean, how much bullshit does this sound like? And somebody close to him goes, it sounds like bullshit, but it's actually pretty polished.
That was the spin equivalent of the guy of like, OJ's lawyers did create reasonable doubt, right? Like if you look at that case, it's like he obviously did it, but they were able to create some measure of reasonable doubt. Like,
but this
was pure bullshit, but good
this is
bullshit.
like the stuff that it's like, this is why Howard's paying.
Well, I think it's true. I think in a certain limited sense that I think Jill Stein was wrong in saying the parties were the same. I think it's true that the people are closer generally than the parties are, but the reason the parties are so polarized is because of oligarchy.
Right.
Well, the other thing is that's not the question. The premise that he set up in his op-ed had nothing to do with what their perspective were on the parties. Obviously, Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, they are not drawing from the same well necessarily. The whole point was you're siphoning off votes. You're siphoning off votes from Clinton. Therefore, you are, and so it's the exact same situation. Whatever Howard Schultz believes about where the parties are and where the American people are and whatever that diagram he's drawn.
It's not worth doing a segment on, but apparently some informants have told me that Jill Stein will be on Fox tonight to talk about third-party runs. So, I mean, there is like also just one line of really dumb thinking in America that there's something innately magical about any third-party effort.
Let's listen.
A different kind of outcome, a different kind of politics in America. And secondly, I just think that he, first of all, hasn't made the decision to run. But if he did, I think we can agree that it would be a more serious effort than what Jill Stein put together.
Oh, pause it. In other words, it's going to be even more assuredly throw the election to Trump.
It's going to be even more damaging.
There's some debate. You could say Jill Stein, strictly in terms of numbers may have, had those votes, but we can't say seriously that she seriously drew support from Hillary Clinton. We'll be able to say that this time.
Yeah, he's arguing against his own point. Premise. It's ridiculous. Yes. Like, it's fun to watch these people spin their wheels and make fun of them, but like, if Bernie is the nominee, there will be a much more serious third-party spoiler candidate. And like when that comes along, we need to remember this person does not get to portray themselves as a centrist. They do not get to portray themselves as a moderate, whether they're doing it for their own personal grift or what. The outcome is that Trump will be president still, and that is the outcome that the ruling class wants.
Well, fair enough, and we still don't know how much help Jill Stein had from outside actors, given where she spent December of 2015. But let me ask you this.
Oh, my God.
He obviously, you're using this book tour to launch an exploratory bid as well as any book tour launch.
Pause it. I wonder if Howard Schultz ever been to Russia.
That's what I want to know.
God darn it.
What's going on with the board?
I don't know. Something's wrong with the thing. It's an old...
Have meeting with Howard Schultz.
Any book tour launch for a presidential bid, as I've seen in a while. So it's clear you want this to be the front. Why? What I'm trying to figure out is I don't understand why he wants to run other than he's not them and not them. What is the big idea beyond not a Republican and not a Democrat?
Well, the book tour, he wrote the book, whether he was going to think about this or not, because he has a story to tell and he wanted to get it out there. You know, he's a guy who grew up in the projects and was self-made. He worked his way through college. He went on to build a great company that did the right thing by the folks who worked for it. And now he wants to continue to serve. In terms of what his big idea is, it's that politics is broken. And maybe we need a solution to it that risks the imagination of a new kind of possibility.
Circle.
Maybe
what does this come, right? The politics are broken. I'm up here. I have taken everything I learned from the Obama administration, and I am just selling it out in such a way to make this guy a figure who with no agenda other than the fact that politics are broken, and I sitting here being paid the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it seem like this guy actually has a chance to do anything other than perhaps elect Donald Trump. It is the ultimate. It's just so much cynicism. It's so layered on top of itself. It is like it literally is like a parfait of cynicism, just slightly different gradations of different product that we can look at, and just it's exquisite.
And as
what
you
Bill
can
Burton
see,
has
there's
built.
a huge amount of skepticism in new and independent media about your candidacy. And you know, Howard, if you want a little bit of consultation on how to leverage
And
your
let me
means
just
of
make it clear,
communication,
Bill
and-
Burton's not the guy for you.
Yeah,
I'm the guy.
Yeah,
for you.
well, I'm the guy for you, or maybe potentially.
Is there
some
any
type
more of
partnership.
this,
Well,
crap
let's just
show?
play a little bit more because he says the phrase "risk the imagination of a new possibility."
Thank you. That's what I.
Now he wants to continue to serve. In terms of what his big
Serve?
idea is,
Continue
it's
to
that
serve?
Coffee.
Politics is broken, and maybe we need a solution to it that risks the imagination of a new kind of possibility. Maybe
What has he done? Pause it. Like, now, you can.
That needs to be a drop.
Now, here's the thing. You could hear him shuffling papers as he was saying. Now, maybe that's Chuck Todd, but he takes a pause. There's no doubt in my mind he's looking down. Go backwards, because that's the phrase that they workshopped and they came up with that's going to explain his candidacy. It's his. This is exactly the words I will never know. So I will make this bet. There is no doubt in my mind that Burton comes in and says, "You need your audacity of hope." And here it is.
he wants to continue to serve. In terms of what his big idea is, it's that politics is broken, and maybe we need a solution to it that risks the imagination of a new kind of possibility. Maybe
What has he done? He risks the imagination of a new kind of possibility. And this is the way that it goes. No. In fact, I amend it. Burton did not come up with this because it's too wordy. Schultz came up with it and said,
Schultz has been coming.
because Burton said, "You need your audacity of hope," and Schultz goes, "I have it." We need to risk the what is it? Risk
the imagination of a new type of possibility.
We need to risk the imagination of a new type of policy, of possibility. And let me do my impersonation of Bill Burton when he says that. Yeah. Yeah. Say that one more time to me again. Yeah, because
I just want to make sure I memorize it before I go and meet the press, because you're really saying something there, man.
Oh no, definitely no. That's exactly right.
You're the new Obama.
No, that's exactly it. We need to risk the imagination of a new type of possibility.
You're Obama with job experience.
Oh my
You're
God.
Obama with
Home
business
run.
background.
You're the Obama
Home
that
run.
did build that.
Yeah, you're.
Now I know why Starbucks is so huge. Wow, that is really God.
Bad. I don't understand. I mean, that's amazing. Like, because all of these other guys, but actually, who's the other really sleazy Obama guy? Messina. He consulted for the Tories, so he's an ultra sleazy Obama guy. But
Yeah,
but
it's
all the
fishhook
other
theory.
Obama people, at least, they stuck around the sort of orbit you'd expect them to stick around. And but Burton is head of I think it's SDK Knickerbocker of California, which is a pretty prominent Democratic consulting firm. So he's not even like some of these grifts in the past. I feel like are kind of like consultants, sort of like past their prime, and they're like, ooh, maybe I can kind of exploit some
It's not like
gullible
this guy.
rich person. But like Burton, first of all, he helped win a presidential race, and he's still in the game. So I mean, anyways,
it gives
the
you a
check
sense.
must be
It gives you
amazing.
a sense of the size of
it
cash.
Must be such good money to be
I
made.
mean,
Which really,
honestly.
Howard, I'd like to talk to you about how to approach people on Patreon. I'd like to talk to you about how to use YouTube. I think that there's a lot of people who would be amenable to a progressive socialist case for radical debt reduction. Let's talk about
Oh my
it.
God. Did you see what AOC tweeted / about him? She said, why don't people ever tell billionaires who want to run for president that they need to work their way up, or that maybe they should start with city council first?
There you go. Well, because he's a titan of industry. But here's the thing. We can sit here, we can make fun of Howard Schultz, we can decry the cynicism involved in those who would consult with him and pretend like he has something to offer America. But the fact of the matter is that we know these titans of capitalism are letting us down. I give you Laura Ingraham and the ethically and follically challenged Frank Luntz on that very topic.
Who's more ideologically unattuned to what their parents and their grandparents think.
Well, that's because we never had universities quite this radical or a media quite this involved in the spreading of these untruths about the free market, et cetera. And we have
Pause it
CEOs.
for 1 second. She's talking about why students love socialism, folks. We've never had schools that are this radical or a media that's this. It's just unbelievable.
Control F, crippling debt.
But it's just amazing the level of cynicism because there's no way she believes this. But go ahead.
Quite this involved in the spreading of these untruths about the free market, et cetera. And we have CEOs, Frank, that are running for cover. I mean, these CEOs who have been doing well in the Trump economy, they better get out there, get out from under their desks and start defending this way of life in this country, or they're going to find themselves, I guess, running for the next plane to the Bahamas or somewhere else they can hide their money.
Now, I
want the Bahamas too.
Well, what I found fascinating about this was like she's talking about the wonderfulness of capitalism, and then at the same breath, basically making a joke like, I also know they all hide their money from taxes, like it's all criminal enterprise.
Yeah, that's part of what's good about it.
Unbelievable. Let's not play this Bloomberg thing right now.
Oh, really? You don't want to play me? Fuck Howard Schultz.
Calling from...
Maybe we should have Medicare for all, and you pay for it, coffee boy.
Calling from an 832 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Folks, we have literally 37 people on hold. We will not get to about 37 of them. Calling from an 832 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Chris from Austin.
Chris, what's on your mind?
Hi, so I'm a person who was born in Venezuela, moved to the U.S. when I was 10 years old, and I kind of wanted to get your opinion about how the left has been handling kind of a criticism of what's going on. And I will preface this by saying that I don't want a U.S. intervention. I think it would be absolutely terrible, and I think people like John Bolton are ghouls. But I've noticed... Sorry?
Go ahead.
I've noticed from, mostly internet, but like a lot of leftist conversations, or just unabashedly just say that the Maduro government is good, and there's no kind of critique of the Maduro government. It's just like the picture is that the opposition is only a psyop from the United States, and that the Maduro government is a wonderful socialist government that doesn't have authoritarian leanings and isn't quite problematic. How do you see that?
Well, I think I think there's not a tremendous amount. I think sometimes these things get polarized in terms of an argument about this, right? Where I would imagine some people genuinely believe that because they just don't necessarily have a lot of sense of what's going on there. And I think some people probably do that because it is there is a political argument in this country whether we should be intervening or not, and it is a easier one to win by simply saying that this is a that there isn't a problem with the Maduro government, and it becomes easier to win that because frankly, that's within the context of a domestic argument in this country. It's like, should we intervene or not? And from an academic perspective, it may make a difference as to where, for people in the United States as to, what Maduro is about. But in terms of this specific question at this specific time, I think maybe some people feel that it doesn't. I don't know.
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Like, look, I know that there's definitely some people who are strong defenders of Maduro, and I think even within those defenses there are really big differences, because like I would consider myself certainly of the Chavez era a supporter with criticisms and caveats, and then I think under Maduro there's been a real breakdown, and then the other conversation becomes, well, what is the dual role between internal failings and relentless U.S. pressure? And then that also becomes like the primary responsibility to oppose U.S. interference. And then the last thing I'd say to you, and I'm curious what you think about this, is my read is that all of the opposition, and more reporting is coming out with Guaido and right-wing background. I mean, this is not somebody I trust at all, and I do consider this absolutely, I mean, this is objectively an attempted coup. I think that there are, and I've talked to some people who I think are genuinely like opposed to both sides and very unhappy with the situation in Venezuela, and they say there's no political path for us. If you oppose Maduro, but you recognize the opposition is right-wing, it is connected to the old oligarch parties, and it is backed by the United States. So I have no doubt that there's organic protests and opposition, but I don't think those people have a base in any of this right now. That's part of the tragedy of the situation. But first and foremost, we just have to oppose U.S. intervention in Venezuela.
Oh, absolutely. And I watched a video called "A Leftist Debunks John Oliver's Venezuela" episode the other night on YouTube, and I think you should take everything with a grain of salt that comes out about this. It's very hard to find totally unbiased sources. But if you want, and I do think it glosses over some of the missteps of the Maduro government, but if you want an alternate point of view on what exactly happened there, I think it's pretty good. Maybe Michael can evaluate it and say his opinion later.
I think that's worth watching. Even more worth watching is We're Tired Enough with John Oliver's crappy foreign policy commentary, which you can find at the TMBS YouTube channel.
I will watch that one too.
But what I would say is I feel like there's been a characterization, at least from the protests I've seen, opposition protests, like there's been a very clear message that this is going to be the interim president, and that what we're really shooting for are another set of elections that, you know, both parties can agree on. Like, I feel like there is a legitimate argument for why the elections, the last elections for Maduro were problematic. And I mean, there are political prisoners. There were like important political figures that could have been an actual opposing force in the election that were not allowed to run.
To the extent that I have heard critique of Guaido's gambit is that it's around that that he's making moves that sound a lot less interim-y than president-y. And that there's, like I said earlier, you know, I've read some sort of legal folks who probably come at this more from a constitutional perspective in Venezuela, who are supportive of the was it 233 being invoked, but felt that he was taking steps that went beyond that. Beyond setting up a process for a new presidency and just assuming it in an inappropriate way. But appreciate the phone call.
And Maduro has agreed to negotiations.
Last call of the day, calling from a 908 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 908.
Hi, is this me?
Yes. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hi.
Got to be quick.
Hi, this is Jay from New Jersey.
Jay from New Jersey. What's on your mind?
I'm surprised I finally got through.
Me too.
Hi. So I was at your live show a couple of weeks ago.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
The one thing I want to talk about is, sorry a second. You asked a question about whether the audience would support, like, just giving Trump the wall if he gave DACA or something.
Right.
And I voted I'm sorry, I'm a little
you're doing great. Keep
haven't
going.
been on the phone before. I used to work for the federal government, and a lot of people are really sick of how they're treated. A lot of presidents, including Obama, would reject COLA raises.
Right.
These shutdowns are happening more regularly, and people in the federal government, they're paid less than in the private sector. So these people are really working for the country, and to be treated like crap by Trump and a lot of these administrations, it's not very fair. So I think standing up against Trump and these shutdowns and just saying an example, we're not going to play this game, that's a good thing. And that's why I'm against caving, in all situations. Just reopen the government and we'll negotiate a budget.
Well, that's what they've done, and that's what they've done. And I think there's something to that. And I think the Democrats don't seem to have trusted Trump enough to do anything but, and their gambit won. And hopefully this is not something that we'll see again from the Republicans. I mean, hopefully they get stung enough by this that we will not see this happen again. Appreciate the phone call. Thanks for coming to the show. All right, I'm going to do 3 more IMs and then got to get out of here. Here we go. Maybe 5 more IMs. DX Fool. Hello, socialist Jewish warriors. In Piers Morgan news, TV host slams AOC for being like Trump in glossy heels. And what an idiot.
Who cares? Piers Morgan is nothing.
Gabe, formerly from Chicago. Jamie's Alex Jones impression sounds like Bobby Hill. JJ Cool. Hey, Sam. During your cultural involvement days, did you listen to lyrics at that time? No, I did not. Right about now. Did you get Brendan's portrait? I'm going to do either the crew from TMBS or Antifa next. I think we did. Did you see it? Okay, good.
Briscoe's waiting.
Zero Sum Sam. What happened to right-wing Mandela? Where is he? What is his takes on the current news? Tune in tomorrow. Nick from Manitoba.
Free Venezuela.
When Mike Cernovich rightly declared that blockchain and energy shift were all connected, you guys mocked him. Yet now he's converted to Islam. So who's laughing now, Sam?
Exactly. I'm going to try to get him on TMBS.
Tam Folger, there's a great documentary film about the Barnes Museum. Google it. Gas Socialist. If you want to see a great documentary about capitalism and the art, The Price of Everything is on HBO about the super rich and art. Kentucky Fried Comrade, AMR crew. I wanted to IM shout out old friend of the show, Chris Christie's tell-all book, Let Me Finish. My time in McDonald's, Arby's, Hardee's, and every all-you-can-eat buffet has dropped and getting rave reviews. Pajama Boy. Hey, Sam, so I'm a wrestling fan, which is terrible, but I saw a segment you showed Daniel Bryan last week and the other guy in the ring. AJ Styles was recently on Crowder's show. He supposedly debunked toxic masculinity with him, but I thought it was funny that he's feuding with Daniel Bryan. You should have Daniel Bryan on. Jules, in December, there were protests at the Whitney by the Decolonize This Place against a board member with ties to manufacturing tear gas used on migrants. Also, 100 Whitney employees submitted a letter to the director of the museum demanding the resignation of that guy. Basically, the director told the employees to screw off. Duct tape dipshit. Hey, didn't we already try a centrist versus Trump in 2016? F the center. Left is best. Black Marxist. Can the Green Party go away? Stein was on Tucker Carlson running interference for Howard Schultz. A Square. Oh, Sam, saw that. Yes, Christie did enjoy repeating that story about the Kushners. Not surprised about Schmidt. He gave us Palin. Isaiah, have you considered having Melinda Cooper on for an interview? Her book on the family is pretty interesting. Brendan, make a note. Melinda Cooper. Used to be melancholy. The woman's in labor. It's called a C-section. Hang did fanboy. This is my third IM, and you've botched my scream 2 other times. I just did it again. I was Hogan fan. Next, I was Diddle Boy or some shit. I know what you're trying to do, Sam. Deny the greatness of Hogan Gidley. Say my name, Sam. Say it. Okay. And the final IM of the day.
You did it again.
Yeah, I know. I did it again. I don't care. People I personally know here in South Carolina have been losing their minds about the New York abortion bill. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. The months drifted into years, while I shifted in and out of gear, waiting for my moment to happen. I don't know how much longer I can stay in, or how much more I got to pay to play in. I know somehow the lights got graded somewhere before the credits faded, but my pilot light shining, pilot light shining, pilot light shining bright.